Hello and welcome again to Anatomy and Physiology 2. This video is designed to help familiarize you with the components of the Bio 169 fully online course Moodle site and highlight the major components of the Moodle site that we're going to be using really throughout the duration of the semester. So we'll begin in the Welcome Start Here section. The major component that's within the Welcome Start Here section is this required enrollment assignment, which the deadline of this assignment is due before the 10% point in the course, and completion of this assignment will help to unlock the other modules, including some of the modules that have important course materials within them. So it's important that you complete this assignment before the deadline to avoid being withdrawn from the course, but also so that it will help you to unlock some of the additional material in the course as well. There's also an item here for the contact information for the Technology Support Services Help Desk with their email, their phone number, and their website as well. We'll move on to the course information section next. First items that you'll see in the course information section are the course syllabus and the course schedule. The second thing that you have to complete before the modules for the lecture and lab materials will unlock for you is reviewing the course syllabus in its entirety and then signing the syllabus acknowledgement statement. So once you complete the required enrollment assignment and the syllabus acknowledgement statement, you'll see that the first couple of modules of material will become available to you. I've also placed a course schedule right next to the course syllabus. The course schedule outlines the topics that we will be covering for a particular week, and in addition, the course schedule will also highlight all of the quizzes and exams. So that is, it will show you all the due dates and deadlines for the lab quizzes and the lecture exams. And we will take the lab quizzes and the lecture exams on these dates. We will most likely not deviate from that schedule unless we need to for some unforeseen circumstances. And if there is an event that causes us to have to reschedule a quiz or an exam, I will certainly give you an adequate notice well ahead of time before rescheduling that particular quiz or exam. If anything, we will move quiz deadlines and exam deadlines back. Typically, I will not move them forward or ahead in time. So you can plan on taking the quizzes and the exams as shown in that schedule there. There's also my instructor information here, my contact information, my email address and phone number, my office hours, which are Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 12 to 1 p.m., Tuesdays from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., and Thursdays from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. During these office hours, I will be available physically on campus in my office in Science 110E, and I will also be available simultaneously on Zoom, so that way, if you are a fully online student, as in this course, you can still meet with me during those times. I'm also more than happy to schedule a time outside of these office hours with, of course, proper communication with you and coordination with you for a time that works for both of us. But I'm more than happy to coordinate with you to meet at a time outside of these as long as it's convenient for both of us. There's also a little biography about me here and just about my background, education, and what I do in my time outside of work. I mentioned above that there is an option to meet with me through Zoom. The Zoom link is here along with the password. And you can also, in addition to emailing me to coordinate a time to meet outside of my office hours, you can also use my Calendly link here, which will help you to schedule a meeting time with me. However, if you would like to simply meet during my normally posted office hours, you do not need to schedule an appointment. You're free to stop by or enter the Zoom room to meet with me during any of those posted office hours times without an appointment. Some information here about feedback and communication with me. during a typical work week, I'll usually respond to an email or a phone call within about 24 hours, within 48 hours on a typical weekend, and during holidays, depending on the length of the holiday, I may or may not be able to respond to you within a couple of days, but it will be within 72 hours on holidays. Next, we will examine the tutoring services site. There is a link to our virtual tutoring here, which is called Thinking Storm, but we also have a calendar for our on-campus tutoring, which is in what's called the Academic Resource Center, or the ARC, in Science 113B, and they do have biology tutors in there, so it would be beneficial if you would like to schedule an appointment with a tutor in the Academic Resource Center and go meet with them face-to-face. But we also do have online tutoring for individuals and students who are unable to make it to campus on a regular basis. Next, the Missed Class module will simply contain any information in the event that a class has to be canceled, or any information, lectures, quizzes, exams have to be moved back in the event of inclement weather, power outages, that kind of thing. But being a fully online class, I don't see that we will have to. I don't see too many scenarios in which we would have to postpone things due to weather, power outages, and things like that. But we will deal with those situations if and when they arise. Next, we have the Course Announcements, Study Groups, Forum, and Introductions module. So this module is pretty much just named for all the items that it contains. The first is the Course Announcements Forum, which is going to be the major way that I'm going to be delivering news and information to you through the course. So certainly please pay attention to these. I would encourage you to check these maybe a couple of times a week just to see if there's any updates in there. But I also do have it set so that any course announcement that I post will also be sent to your RCC email as well. So you should be getting notifications in your RCC email when I post course announcements. There's also a forum in here for posting information that you can use to exchange with your peers so that you can organize peer study groups. Even though it is a fully online class, I would encourage you to reach out to your peers to do maybe FaceTime study sessions with them, meeting in person to do in-person study sessions with them if possible, depending on where everybody lives. But peer study groups are, I think, a very important part of being successful in the course, and I would certainly highly encourage you to seek out a peer study group and study with your classmates. The third item that's in here is an introductions forum, which after the first week of the course, we really won't use too much, but that's just for a forum that's going to be used for posting information about yourself, really just kind of as an icebreaker so that we can all kind of get to know each other a little bit on a personal level in the course. Next, this is the first of the links that is blocked by completing the activity enrollment assignment, or I should say unlocked by completing the required enrollment assignment and the syllabus acknowledgement statement. So until you have completed both of these items, you may see that this module is locked. But upon completion of these two items, this module will unlock. This only has this module only contains the link to the OpenStax textbook. The next module is the Helpful Websites, Study Tips, and Spelling Policy. Again, its title is very explanatory of what's contained within it. The first item within this module are links to additional websites from other colleges, other professors, other institutions that have very good information regarding various topics in anatomy, practice quizzes, practice tests, practice questions, practice diagrams, and things like that. So I would encourage you to take a little bit of time to explore some of these here. A couple of items here, a document and a link to a video about study for the course, expectations for studying, and things like that. So these are good resources to review in case maybe it's been a little while since you've taken anatomy or had to study for a course at this level. And these tips will be, I think, certainly helpful for anyone who is just looking for some new ideas and some fresh ideas on how to study for the course and how to be successful. Next is the spelling policy for the lab quizzes. So this really just highlights the spelling policy in the event of misspellings, singular versus plural, that kind of thing, for the lab quizzes. The short of the spelling policy is that, for the most part, if you spell an item incorrectly, but it's maybe only misspelled by like one letter, usually I'll give you full credit for that. Sometimes I might only give you partial credit, just depending on the term, the word, because some words, some terms, if you change one letter, it changes the entire meaning of the word. And so there are a few exceptions there. But generally, if it's misspelled by a letter, for the most part, I'll generally give you full credit for that. If it's misspelled by 2 or more letters, but I can still understand what the word that you were trying to convey was, then usually I'll give you half credit, partial credit for that. Anything beyond that is worth no credit. So just because it's too misspelled and it's incorrectly spelled at that point. The next module contains the links for the lab quizzes. Now, the lab quizzes are the only assessments in the course that are proctored, and they will be proctored by me through the online proctoring service, which is called Respondus. And so the only items that you should have available to you during the lab quizzes are your device that you're taking the quiz on, and the only window that should be open in the device that you're taking the quiz on is the quiz window itself. This section highlights the fact that the lab quizzes are worth half of the total course grade. There are very thorough instructions for each one on how to set up the room that you're taking the quiz in, what you should and should not have available to you. As I mentioned earlier, the only things that should be right in front of you during a proctored quiz time is the device that you're taking the quiz on and the quiz window itself on that device. There shouldn't be any other windows open. There shouldn't be any notes, anything within reach, any other devices, cell phones, things like that, smartwatches. So nothing is permitted during the quiz except the device that you're taking the quiz on and the quiz window itself. Anything else that's within arm's reach or that is open on your computer is in violation of these rules, and you will receive a 0 on the quiz if there is a violation of these rules. And so the instructions on here kind of fully detail all of that, so I would encourage you to review all of these in their entirety before you begin that first quiz. There's also information on here if you have issues with the Respondus proctoring service before, during, or after a proctored quiz session. And then below that, of course, this one's not available right now because this is a quiz that we'll take at the end of the semester, but you will see a header and the link to the quiz itself. There is nothing extra that you have to do to set up the Respondus. All you do is simply click on the quiz link and follow the on-screen instructions to set up Respondus for each of those quizzes. There's no additional link for Respondus. It's built right into the quiz link itself. So next we will examine the lecture exams module, which the lecture exams are open book and open note. They are worth 40% of the total course grade. And the exams are open book, open note, but they are timed. So the time limits on the exams are strict enough that if you do not go into the exam having studied for the exam, you will run out of time trying to look up every single answer to every single question. So what I recommend is that you study for the exam as though it were closed book, closed note. Go into the exam, answer all the questions that you are able to answer immediately on that exam, and then with any remaining time left, or any questions that you that you aren't immediately sure of the answer to, there's an option in the exam to flag that question, and with any remaining time you can come back to those flagged questions and use your notes or use the textbook to look up the answers for those, or at least help you obtain the answer for that particular question. I would recommend only using the lecture notes and the OpenStax textbook as your note sources for these, because both of those, the information from both of those sources came from peer-reviewed sources. So I would not recommend Googling answers, because the context of the that Googled information is often wrong, and you also are not entirely sure of the authenticity of that information. There's a lot of bad information that can be easily obtained through a Google search, a lot of incorrect information that could be obtained through a Google search, and I will certainly scrutinize any answers that I believe came from a search on a search engine like Google. So please consult the lecture textbook, the lecture notes, the lab activity information as your primary sources for answers in the class. Below the instructions are the links for the exams. Of course, this is the final exam, so that's the last exam that we'll take in the course. Being that the exams are not proctored, simply click on the exam link when you're ready to start it, and it will begin the exam for you. Next, we have the first of the lecture modules here, and the lecture modules will all follow roughly the same outline. So from the top of the lecture module, you will see a list of tasks to complete for that lecture module. Next, you will see a list of learning objectives. So these are a kind of brief outline of what to expect from that particular lecture module, what topics you're going to learn, what structures we're going to examine, the functions of those structures that we're going to examine. So the learning objectives are a really great source of really questions for the exams and the quizzes as well. So you can look at the learning objectives as really kind of a study guide of what to review for the lecture exams or for the lab quizzes. Next, there is some information on which sections of the OpenStax textbook will apply to the information that we learn in lecture. And so all of these sections in the OpenStax textbook correspond to the exact same material that we cover in my lectures on Moodle. There's an item here that shows the major assessments for this particular module. So this typically will highlight the lecture exam and the lab quiz or lab quizzes that this information will be contained on. Next, we have the lecture PowerPoint and a lab list. The lab list is really a list of terms, structures, definitions, or concepts that I'm going to expect you to know for the lab quizzes. So typically, the lab list will also be a really great source to use as a study guide for the lab quizzes, in addition to the learning objectives that I highlighted a few moments ago. Next, you will see links to the lecture videos that I have recorded for you that correspond to the slides in the lecture PowerPoint file. So those are the lecture videos that you'll want to listen to, take notes from, make notes of key terms, definitions, structures, functions that I highlight in those lecture videos. Typically, I try to keep just a note before I scroll past the lecture video links here. Typically, I try to keep the lecture video segments to anywhere between 8 minutes and 15 to 16 minutes. Some of those do occasionally go into the 20-minute range, but you can generally expect they're going to be anywhere from 8 minutes to about 15 or 16 minutes. There's also a number of practice materials that are available. In this case, there are some practice links to some external sources. Typically, we also see practice worksheets that are associated with that particular module that will ask you questions that are going to be similar to the questions on a quiz or an exam. And you will also see keys to those practice worksheets. So I would highly encourage you to try the practice worksheets as a practice quiz or an exam. see how many you get correct, see how many you get incorrect, and then consult the keys to see which answers you got incorrect and why you got them incorrect. Typically, it's going to be better for you to attempt the questions rather than just studying the keys themselves, because then you'll be able to work through problem solving that particular question. And that, I think, will serve you much more than just studying the keys outright. The last part of our tour for this course is the lab modules. The lab modules, like the lecture modules, will have a pretty similar layout. So the later lab modules will look very similar to the earlier lab modules, just like the later lecture modules will look very similar to the earlier lecture modules. So again, we have a list of learning objectives, so you can use this again as kind of a study guide for what to expect on the quiz for that particular lab, but also just what to expect to learn in that particular lab module. There is also a link to the lab reports, which is the online homework for that particular lab, and that counts in this course as 10% of your total course grade. Typically, the due dates for the online lab reports will be on Sundays, so expect to have an online lab report due about every Sunday in the course. I also put the link to the lab list once again in the lab modules. And then beyond there, you have information contained within what I call activities. And so these activities will contain a little bit of information. They may contain diagrams. They may contain lecture video links or video links from YouTube, from other instructors, other professors, things like that. They may contain links to external websites that have additional activities for that particular lab. What I would like to note here is that the information that is within the lab activities, and typically there's anywhere from maybe 4 to 6 or 7 lab activities per lab. And this one is, as you can see here, is mostly just diagrams, information, and text. However, as I mentioned, some of these lab activities will contain links to external videos or external websites. The information that is in these lab activities is going to help you answer the questions that are within the lab reports. So the questions in the lab reports came from those lab activities that you just saw below. So it's going to be important that you're using that information in the lab activities, the links in those lab activities, that is the links to those external videos or those external resources and activities that are going to assist you in answering the questions that are within the lab report. And once again, I would highly discourage you from looking up the answers to the lab report questions by doing a search on an internet search engine, because often the questions are not going to be peer-reviewed for accuracy, and they may be out of context for what we are learning in the class. And once again, I will most likely scrutinize some of those answers very heavily because they are not coming from sources that we know to be accurate and peer-reviewed. And so with that, that concludes our tour of the Moodle site for the Bio 169 fully online course.